so here's the shirt. This is what it looked like when it was on. This is the side. This is how both sides looked. It was open, and I sewed up the sides just to see how it would fit. And this is how I determined that I wanted to make it longer here. And I put that cut right here so that I can drop this down and open it up to fit over all my curves. So I'm going to be talking over the rest of this video. So the fabric that I have, because it was a remnant from a project someone else used, I had to be a little bit creative with the back. I didn't want a visible seam to be in the back. So what I did was I found another piece of the fabric that was going to match up to what I already had cut out. And then once I found a good place, I took my pattern and I laid it on there, and then I was able to cut out a duplicate piece. So as you see the piece lying here, you really can't even see the seam because I have it matched so perfectly. And so now I'm taking the two back pieces and putting them right sides together, and I'm going to do a running stitch on the very edge of both pieces so that whenever I go to iron this, I would iron right on that fold, and then the pieces would be not seen. Here where I'm showing is that whenever I got the 4 pieces cut out, the sleeves were a little bit different, and so I took which one was the shortest sleeve, and I'm going to cut the sleeves based off of the short one. And so you can see right now at the bottom, that is kind of like what's going to be the shortest sleeve. So I go ahead and cut that so that I have a nice straight seam, and then I flip it over, and then I cut the other 3 armholes so that they're all the same length. So now I decide that instead of a 4-inch sleeve, I want an 8-inch sleeve. So I made myself a nice straight edge here, and then I took the pattern and I laid it across, and I cut up one portion of it, and then I moved the sleeve pattern to the top and I cut off the other. So as you can see, folded up, I'll have an 8-inch sleeve. And so now I'm just taking the pieces and I'm laying them out just to show you all the 4 different pieces that are needed for this pattern. You have the bodice, the sleeves, the neck binding, and the lower waistband. And so this is where I am now. What am I doing here? I am sewing up the actual back seam. And so I'm sewing very slowly, even though it doesn't look like I'm sewing very slowly, and then I open it up to check to make sure that you can't see the seam. And if you're looking down, it looks pretty inconspicuous, but on the inside you can tell that there is a seam there. So now I'm taking the back piece and I'm lining it up with the front piece, and what I'm going to do is I use basting thread, and I am going to sew all my seams together first with a very loose running stitch because the fabric is very slippery and I did not want it moving around, and I didn't think pins were going to do the job, so I wanted to use some basting thread. And so I have the front sewn together, and I'm looking at my work and I like what I see. Off camera, I sewed the cuffs to the shirt, and I'm going to go ahead and put both on so that you can see how they went from a very short cuff to a 8-inch cuff. So then I take the cuff and I stick it in the inside of the sleeve, and then I sewed that. And then with the waistband, I sewed the sides together, and then I took the band and I folded wrong sides together to create a nice round nice hem. And then I took that and I pinned it to make sure that it didn't shift because I didn't want the waistband to go on the shirt crooked. So I was actually going to go ahead and sew the waistband directly to the shirt, but then I changed my mind and I wanted to actually sew the waistband or serge the ends together so that both pieces are serged. So my bodice is already serged, and so now I'm going to serge the waistband. Here I'm using a stretch stitch to attach the waistband to the bodice. You don't want to use a straight stitch because eventually your stitches could start popping when you try to open up your shirt. So you want to use a stretch stitch for elasticity. Off screen, I've attached a collar, and then I'm going to fold the collar over the seam allowance and then baste that by hand. And then this gives me a good idea of what the collar is going to look like before I permanently stitch it down. So after checking it out, I take this piece and I'm going to go underneath the machine, and starting in the back where that back seam is that you could barely see, I'm going to start there and I'm going to stitch in a ditch all the way around the collar. And stitching in a ditch is where I'm just taking the needle and make sure that the needle goes directly into that seam of where the collar meets the bodice, because I don't want that stretch stitch to be seen on the outside. So I do this very slow. Here is the finished shirt. I'm so proud of this work. I actually cloned a shirt. This is my first time doing this successfully. I am checking out the collar. The collar is good. It's not going to overstretch, so that as I wash and wear this shirt, I'm not going to lose any elasticity around the top. I'm looking at the sleeve, and I love how it goes from a raglan sleeve to this long 8-inch cuff. I think that is just so cute and takes this shirt from just being a regular t-shirt to an actual shirt that you can wear, that I could wear to work. So I had been sitting on this fabric for a long time, and I wasn't sure if I was ever going to find a pattern to go with it, but who knew that just finding a clone shirt was going to be the right thing. I'm really admiring this shirt, and I'm so glad that I took a chance on cloning my very first shirt. So if you haven't already, please comment, like, and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye!